The morning wind in ancient Laconia was a gentle thing, soft enough to brush against the hills without stirring the dust, calm enough to feel almost like a mother's hand resting lightly on a child's back. It moved slowly through the tall grass, carrying with it the peaceful scent of olive groves, wild thyme, and warm earth. The sky above Sparta opened in calm shades of pale gold and quiet blue, as though the day itself wished to whisper instead of speak. Imagine yourself standing there at sunrise. You feel the coolness of early light on your skin, hear a distant goat bell somewhere near the hills, and watch a single bird glide across the sky with lazy, slow wings. Nothing about this moment suggests harshness. Nothing warns you of the discipline, the sweat, or the unyielding demands waiting on the other side of this peaceful morning. It feels like the kind of day where children might run freely, where families might gather under trees, and where dreams rise and fall like soft breaths. But Sparta was a place shaped by purpose, a land carved by the belief that strength must be made young, long before softness could take root. And today, this peaceful wind welcomed not carefree children, but boys about to step into the hardest chapter of their lives, the agoge. They came walking down a dusty path, each step slow, each breath sharp with uncertainty. Their sandals scuffed lightly against the dry earth, leaving thin trails that disappeared behind them almost instantly. They were small, many of them no taller than your shoulder. Some held their arms stiffly to appear brave. Others kept their eyes lowered, not wanting their fear to show. But inside, every heart beat a little faster, like a soft drum responding to an unseen rhythm. These boys were 7 years old, the age when childhood's bound. They left behind warm homes, mothers who whispered blessings over them, fathers who stood silent but proud, and the familiar comfort of evening meals shared around small fires. They left behind beds, blankets, lullabies, and the soft certainty of belonging. The world they walked toward was one of discipline, endurance, and controlled courage. But in this first moment, as the wind brushed against them, they still looked like ordinary children. Their faces carried dreams, simple ones, of playing by the riverbank, of holding wooden toys carved by an uncle, of climbing fig trees to eat the sweetest fruit. They still remembered the safety of home, the softness of sleep, the freedom of resting without fear. And though they tried to walk firmly, some fingers trembled, some shoulders tightened, and some eyes blinked to hide tears. The road led them between fields where farmers worked quietly, their hands steady on wooden tools. The boys watched them for a moment, watched how calmly the men moved, how peacefully the land breathed around them. One boy wondered why life could not remain simple like this, steady and warm. But the answer was older than any of them, carved into Spartan belief for generations. Peace survived only when strength stood behind it. As the boys neared the training grounds, the sound of older trainees echoed in the distance, sharp, footsteps striking the ground in perfect unison, thud, 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 a rhythm that sounded more like a heartbeat than marching. Even from far away, the boys sensed the discipline in that sound, the years of practice forming each step. It made their stomachs tighten. The training camp appeared ahead, rows of plain wooden huts, a wide dirt yard, and tall trees that offered the faintest shade. There was nothing decorative, nothing welcoming. Everything here existed for purpose. No paintings, no carvings, no bright cloth, no soft mats, just earth, wood, and the silence of expectation. When the boys stepped inside the camp gate, they paused, not commanded to, but simply overwhelmed. The air felt different here. Heavy, like it carried the memories of every child who had walked this path before. The stones on the ground seemed worn by countless feet. Even the wind hushed itself slightly, as though agreement was part of its nature. A trainer approached. His face was calm, unreadable, not cruel but hardened by years of watching children arrive, grow, struggle, and change. His hair was dark, tied loosely behind his head. His cloak hung straight without a single wrinkle. He walked with the smooth confidence of someone who had long ago mastered both silence and strength. His eyes moved over the boys one by one, not searching for weakness, but observing their hearts. Some looked back boldly. Some lowered their gaze. Some clenched their small jaws to appear stronger. And he saw all of this, not with judgment, but with the quiet understanding of a man who had once stood exactly where they stood now. "Welcome," he said simply. The word surprised the boys. They expected commands, warnings, lectures, but instead they received a welcome, soft, steady, nearly warm. It unsettled them more than shouting would have. "You have come to learn," he continued, "not to suffer. You will suffer, yes, but suffering is only a stone on the long road to strength. What matters is how far you walk." He let silence stretch for a moment. The boys stood perfectly still. "You will not walk alone." That sentence landed deeply, like a steady hand placed over their hearts. Some boys exhaled quietly. Others straightened their backs. Without saying another word, the trainer turned and led them forward. The boys followed, crossing the training yard. Dust rose beneath their steps. The air smelled of sun-heated wood and faint smoke from last night's small fires. Older trainees glanced at them but said nothing. Silence was tradition here. The boys were shown where to place their sandals, where to keep their cloaks, where to sleep on thin mats that looked more like woven reeds than bedding. They touched the mats cautiously, realizing quickly how much comfort they had left behind. Then came their first instructions: how to stand properly, how to breathe correctly, how to listen without speaking. These were small things, but in Sparta, small things shaped warriors. The morning stretched on quietly. Birds flew above, unbothered by the training noise. The shadows grew shorter. The air warmed. And still, the boys learned the simplest lessons first, the hardest ones waiting in the distance, like mountains watching a valley. But something gentle lingered within this hardness. Maybe it was the wind, still moving softly. Maybe it was the sky, wide and unthreatening. Maybe it was the hidden truth that even places of discipline carry quiet moments of peace. As the chapter closes, the boys stand in a line, tired but steady. Their fear has not vanished, but it has softened, shaped by the rhythm of the camp, by the calm voice of the trainer, and by the steady comfort of knowing they are not alone in this journey. And the wind, ever patient, stays with them, carrying away the last fragments of their old lives while gently welcoming the beginnings of their new ones. The sun rose higher above Sparta, stretching its warm fingers across the training grounds until even the shadows seemed to hide beneath the huts. Morning softened into late morning, and the boys felt the heat settle slowly upon their shoulders. The air thickened with the scent of dust lifting from the earth, warmed by sunlight that had no intention of being gentle. Yet the boys remained standing in a long, straight line, their small bodies still, their faces serious as they awaited the next steps on the harsh road of discipline. Imagine standing with them now, the sun warming the top of your head, the ground beneath your feet already heating like a simmering stone. You hear the distant hum of cicadas starting their morning chorus. Each chirp a reminder that the day is only beginning. The wind from earlier, the soft companion of dawn, has slowed almost to nothing, leaving the training ground wrapped in a quiet heaviness. The trainer stepped forward again. His shadow fell across the boys like a long, steady line drawn in the dust. He looked at each of them with the same calm intensity as before, not searching for tears or fear, but gauging readiness. Then he lifted his hand, signaling them to follow him. Their footsteps began, soft at first, a brushing sound more than a march. Dust rose gently around their ankles, forming faint clouds that clung to their skin like tiny memories. And so began their first walk along the path of discipline, a path every Spartan boy would walk, whether he wanted to or not. He led them toward a wide clearing at the edge of the camp, where the earth was packed hard from years of training. The boys slowed instinctively, sensing that this place held meaning. The trainer stopped at the center and turned to face them. His cloak brushed the ground. His expression was neutral, as if carved from smooth stone. "This place," he said, "is your classroom, not the huts, not the mats, not the space where you sleep. Here, on this ground, you will learn what it means to be steady." The boys looked around. There were no benches, no tables, no tools, just earth, air, and silence. One boy, small and thin with dark eyes that glittered nervously, thought about the classroom he had left at home, a room with clay cups for writing practice, walls decorated with simple drawings, and a teacher who smiled often. This place felt nothing like that. This place felt heavy, important, almost sacred. "Your first lesson," the trainer continued, "is to stand." The boys blinked, confused. Stand. That sounded simple, easy, too easy. But the trainer understood their thoughts. He knelt down and pressed his palm against the earth. "To stand," he said softly, "is not to be still. It is to feel." He looked up at them. "Feel the ground under your feet. Feel how steady it is, how patient, how constant. A warrior learns from the earth long before he learns from any man." The boys tried. Some adjusted their footing. Others closed their eyes for a breath, trying to sense something deeper. The ground felt rough, warm, solid. It felt like it carried stories, the weight of every boy who had stood here before, the rhythm of every foot that had learned discipline in this circle. "Good," the trainer said. "Now breathe." They breathed in. The air tasted of dust and sunlight. A gentle breeze drifted by, almost out of pity, as if nature itself wanted to give them something kind. "Discipline," the trainer said, "is not punishment. It is control. Of body, of breath, of thought." His words flowed quietly, as though he wanted the boys to absorb them like water soaking into dry soil. "Your feet are your roots. Your breath is your calm. Your thoughts are your shield. Remember this." The boys stood a little taller. The wind brushed lightly through their hair. Then came the next task, walking, not running, not marching, simply walking with purpose. The trainer took slow, steady steps along the edge of the clearing. He moved like someone born of rhythm, like the earth itself trusted him. The boys followed behind him, mimicking each step, trying to understand the meaning hidden behind such a simple action. "Walk," he instructed, as if every step matters. The boys focused, their feet pressed into the earth. Dust puffed gently with each step. Their breathing began to sink, not because they intended it to, but because the quietness of the place invited it. In Sparta, he said, discipline begins not with strength, but with attention. Attention to the small things. He lifted a single olive leaf from the ground and held it up. This leaf fell without anger, without noise, without haste. It listens to the wind. It follows the rhythm of the world. Learn from it. The boy stared at the leaf, tiny and innocent in his hand. Somehow it felt important, like a symbol of balance. Within hardship, they walked in circles around the clearing until the dust covered their legs like a thin second skin. Their feet grew warm. Their backs stiffened. But the trainer never rushed them, never shouted, never scolded. His calmness shaped theirs. When at last he signaled them to stop, they formed a circle again. The sun had risen higher, and beads of sweat glimmered on their foreheads like tiny pearls. The trainer paced slowly in the center. Your bodies will learn pain, he said. Your minds will learn pressure. But your hearts must learn steadiness. He paused. That steadiness begins today. The boys swallowed. Some blinked sweat from their eyes, but none looked away. The trainer motioned for them to sit beneath a tall tree nearby, one of the few trees that grew proudly beside the clearing. Its leaves whispered gently in the breeze, sending tiny shadows dancing across the boys' faces. The shade was thin but comforting. Sitting, he said, is also discipline. They sat cross-legged, backs straight, hands resting quietly in their laps. They tried to keep still, though the ground felt hard and the heat pressed slowly against their skin. Close your eyes, the trainer instructed. The boys obeyed. Listen to the wind. And when you hear your own heartbeat, do not be frightened. It is the sound of your courage waking up. The boys breathed in. Some heard birds. Some heard the rustle of leaves. Some heard the faint hum of insects. And slowly, softly, each one began to hear the quiet pulsing within their chest, steady, patient, alive. For a moment, they felt something peaceful, something grounding, something almost gentle. The trainer let the moment linger. Then he said, a Spartan learns to rest inside discipline, not outside of it. When the boys opened their eyes, they looked calmer than before. Not stronger yet, not fearless yet, but calmer. The trainer stood again. Now, he said, you walk the path again. And so they did, but this time, their footsteps felt different. More aware, more connected. The dust seemed softer under their feet. The breeze felt kinder on their skin. Even the sun seemed less harsh. As though recognizing their effort, they walked until midday approached, until their legs ached and their breaths grew heavy. But this was the harsh road of discipline, not a road of suffering, but of shaping. When the trainer finally stopped them, he spoke quietly. Discipline is not found in force, he said. It is found in rhythm. He placed his hand over his chest. In the rhythm of your heart, he lifted his hand to the sky. In the rhythm of the wind, he touched the ground. In the rhythm of the earth, the boys listened, tired but steady. You will walk this road for many years, he said. Some days will feel long, some will feel painful, but if you listen to the rhythm, you will never be lost. The boys nodded, not because they fully understood, but because something inside them softened toward the lesson. As the chapter closes, they return to the center of the clearing, forming one final circle. Their feet are dusty, their bodies warm, their minds stretched but not broken. They stand quietly, letting the sunlight rest on their shoulders. And though the path ahead is long, They take their first true steps toward it with calmer hearts and steadier breath. Their journey has truly begun. The sun had climbed higher than anyone wanted. It hovered above Sparta like a great glowing shield, heavy and watchful. The shadows it cast were short and dark, gathering under the boys' feet like small puddles of shade. The morning lessons were over, but the day itself had barely begun. Heat trembled above the dirt paths, and the air felt thick enough to hold between your fingers. The trainer led the boys to the edge of the camp, where a long, low bench sat beneath a tired old tree. The tree had grown crooked over the years, as though leaning forward to listen to every whisper spoken under its branches. Its leaves rustled softly, offering just enough shade to make this place feel almost gentle. "Sit," the trainer said. The boys settled onto the bench, trying not to show the relief they felt in their legs. Their thin sandals scraped lightly against the wood before they slipped them off, as instructed. Every boy placed his sandals neatly in a row at his feet. There was something peaceful about the rows of sandals, small, worn, softened by childhood. Some were patched where straps had broken. Some still carried dust from the homes the boys had left behind. Some were too big, gifts from older brothers. Others were too small but cherished anyway. They were all different, yet lined up together. They formed a quiet picture of innocence. And innocence, here, was a fragile thing. "Clean them," the trainer said. The boys looked up, surprised. Clean their sandals. After hours of walking, sweating, and learning, it felt like a task that belonged to home, something their mothers would have reminded them to do gently. Not something a Spartan trainer would command in the midst of harsh discipline, but in Sparta, even the smallest actions carried meaning. They bent forward and began wiping dust off their sandals with their hands. The dust clung easily, warm and fine. It coated their fingers, settled under their nails, and made their palms feel gritty. Some boys used their cloaks, some used leaves, some used the edges of their mats. The air filled with the soft, scratching sound of leather being brushed clean. It was simple work, almost too simple, but it created a moment of quiet in the day. Imagine sitting with them, feeling the breeze ripple slowly through the tree above, dropping tiny specks of shade across the boys' faces. The dust in the air glitters slightly in the sunlight, turning the simple task into something that feels gentle, almost sacred. You smell the warm leather, the dry earth, the faint sweetness of wild grass carried by the wind. One of the boys, a small child with curly brown hair, paused as he held his sandal. He traced the cracks along the leather. He remembered his father giving it to him just 2 weeks earlier, smiling as he tightened the strap around his son's foot. "You'll walk far in these," he had said. The memory hit the boy softly, like a warm wave that carried both comfort and sadness. Another boy leaned closer to his sandals, smelling them for a moment, pretending he could still catch the scent of home. He couldn't. They smelled only of dust now. Dust and sunlight. The sense of a new life. The trainer observed them quietly. His eyes softened, though the boys did not notice. He knew what this moment meant. The transition between childhood comforts and Spartan discipline. Sandals, small and simple, were reminders of gentler days. "Your sandals," the trainer finally said, "carry the dust of where you have been. But soon, your feet will carry the weight of who you will become." The boys paused, listening. "You clean them not because they must look new," he continued, "but because you must remember that every journey begins with small steps." The boys nodded, though some did not fully understand. But the words settled inside them like seeds dropped into soil, quiet now, but waiting to grow. When they finished cleaning, the trainer told them to set their sandals aside again. Not neatly now, but in a pile. A single pile for all of them. The boys hesitated. A pile seemed chaotic, unordered, wrong. But this was the lesson. They gently placed their sandals into the pile, watching as their familiar pairs were swallowed by the mix of others. It felt strange, almost uncomfortable. Without their sandals neatly paired, they felt a little less like themselves. "Stand," the trainer said. They stood. "Look at the pile." They looked. "What do you see?" Silence drifted for a moment. Then one boy whispered, "All the sandals look the same." The trainer nodded slowly. "Yes, they are simple, ordinary, worn by children who have lived different lives." Another boy added softly, "But now they're together." The trainer smiled, just barely. "And so are you." He stepped closer to the pile. "In the agoge, you will lose many things. Softness, fear, comfort." He paused. "But you will also lose the belief that you stand alone." The boys exchanged glances. The meaning touched them more deeply than they expected. "You will find your strength with each other," the trainer said. "Your courage will be shared. Your hardships shared. Your victories shared." He pointed to the sandals. "As these belong together now, so do you." A breeze passed through, lifting tiny dust particles into the air like drifting sparks. The boys breathed more deeply, letting the calm wash over them. The trainer motioned them forward. "Choose any pair." The boys blinked. "Any," one whispered. "Any," the trainer repeated. They stepped hesitantly toward the pile and picked up sandals that were not their own. Some boys found pairs that were too small. Others ended up with sandals too large. Some mismatched pairs fell into their hands. One sandal old and cracked, the other nearly new. They frowned slightly, confused, but they obeyed and slid the sandals onto their feet. The ground felt uneven beneath them, strange and unfamiliar. "You will walk now," the trainer said. So they walked. Some stumbled. Some stepped awkwardly. Some felt the straps rub uncomfortably against their skin. But as they walked, something quiet unfolded inside them. A recognition that this discomfort was shared by everyone. This was the purpose. You walk not for comfort, the trainer reminded them, but for unity. They walked around the clearing, their mismatched sandals making uneven prints across the dirt. Each footprint looked different, yet together they formed a pattern, a map of young lives, learning to move forward as one, and slowly the strangeness faded. Not because the sandals fit, but because the boys began to match each other's rhythm. Footstep, footstep, footstep. Dust rose in soft waves behind them, their breaths synchronized, their shoulders aligned, their hearts, though beating with uncertainty, began to beat in a quiet harmony. After many slow laps, the trainer finally told them to stop. He walked toward the pile of sandals again and knelt beside it. "You may take your own now," he said. The boys hurried toward the pile, searching for the familiar shapes of their own pairs. When they slipped into them again, the leather felt warmer, kinder, more comforting. They stood straighter, more confident. The trainer watched them carefully. "Remember this lesson," he said. "Strength does not grow from being alone. Strength grows from learning the burdens of others." The boys shifted, absorbing the meaning. Some hearts softened, some tightened, but all understood that something in them had changed, not through harshness, but through a quiet lesson hidden inside sandals and dust. The trainer pointed to the long path beyond the clearing, a thin line of earth stretching into the distance. "That," he said, "is the road you will walk for many years." The boys followed his gaze. The path looked endless. The trainer added softly, "You will walk it together." A deep calm settled inside them. Not peace exactly, but steadiness, a new thread woven into their spirits. As the sun dipped slightly in the sky, the boys placed their sandals back neatly by their beds, knowing now that each pair carried more meaning than before. The dust around them glowed golden in the fading light, and the air felt gentler, like a blanket slowly spreading across the camp. And so, beside the dust of boyhood, they took their next quiet steps toward becoming something greater than themselves. The next day did not begin with shouting or sudden orders. It began with the soft grey of dawn stretching slowly over the hills of Sparta. The air was cool and thin, almost fragile. Mist lay low on the fields, curling quietly around the training grounds like a shy visitor. Birds called softly to each other from the trees, their voices small but clear, as if they were gently reminding the world to wake up. The boys rose from their thin mats, their bodies a little sore from the previous day. The hard ground had not been kind, but it had been honest. It made no promises it could not keep. It did not pretend to be soft. It simply existed, the same for everyone. That, too, was one of Sparta's first lessons. They folded their cloaks carefully, learning that order began with small habits. A crooked cloak, a loosely tied strap, a carelessly placed sandal. All of these were reminders that the mind was not yet fully awake. The trainer watched them closely, not to find fault, but to see who was beginning to understand that discipline lived in the details. When they stepped outside, the sky was still pale, brushed with soft pink and gentle blue. The sun had not yet broken free from the horizon, but its presence was already felt in the faint glow that lit the world. The air smelled of cold earth and dew, mixed with a hint of smoke from last night's fire. "Come," the trainer said, his voice low but steady. They followed him to the same clearing where they had walked and stood the day before. The ground here felt familiar now, though still rough beneath their feet. The mist was slowly lifting, and their breath showed faintly in front of them in small white clouds. "Today," the trainer said, "you will learn to listen." The boys glanced at each other. They had already been listening, or so they thought. They had listened to orders, to footsteps, to the sound of their own hearts racing in their chests. But the trainer meant something deeper. He motioned for them to sit, legs crossed, backs straight, hands resting gently on their knees. The boys settled on the cool ground, feeling the dampness of morning seep through their thin garments. Some shivered lightly, but no one complained. "Close your eyes," the trainer instructed. They obeyed. "Breathe in." Slowly, they drew in breaths, the air cool and sharp in their lungs. "Now listen. Hear what is outside you." At first, they heard only the obvious, the soft rustling of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, the hush of wind moving across the grass. But as they remained still, other sounds began to appear. The faint crack of a twig, somewhere far away, the quiet buzzing of a small insect. Near their feet, the soft shifting of another boy trying to sit more comfortably. The slow, careful footsteps of the trainer circling them. "Do not chase the sounds," the trainer said. "Let them come to you. Let them pass through you." The boys listened. The world expanded. It felt as though the camp was breathing with them, inhaling, exhaling, existing in a steady, gentle pattern that made the early hour feel peaceful instead of harsh. Now, the trainer continued. Listen inside. The boys focused inward. At first, it was difficult, like trying to see their own reflection in water that kept moving. But slowly, they began to hear the rhythmic pounding of their hearts, the rush of blood in their ears, the small tremble in their own breath when a sudden thought of home drifted across their minds. Do not be afraid of what you hear, the trainer said. Your heartbeat is not your weakness. It is your promise. It means you are still here, still trying, still alive. A calmness settled over them, sinking into their bones. After a long moment, he spoke again. Open your eyes. The world returned in full color. The sky had brightened. The mist was almost gone. The training ground looked the same, yet somehow clearer, as though their sharpened attention had washed it with fresh light. Stand, he said. They rose, feeling steadier. Today, your lessons will be quiet ones, the trainer told them. Not of strength, but of awareness. He walked to the edge of the clearing where a few wooden spears lay on the ground. Their surfaces were smooth but not polished, carved simply and built for training. He picked one up, spun it lightly in his hand, and planted its base in the dirt. You will learn to move, he said, not like boys playing, but like eyes watching. He handed each boy a spear. The wood felt cool and solid in their palms, the weight unfamiliar but not overpowering. They held them with both hands, gripping too tightly at first. Loosen your fingers, the trainer guided. A weapon is not meant to be strangled. It is meant to be understood. They adjusted their grip. The spears began to feel more like tools, less like burdens. He showed them the simplest movements, stepping forward with one foot, sliding the other behind, keeping their bodies balanced and their eyes forward. He moved slowly, each step deliberate, each turn controlled. Do as I do, he said. They followed. Their first attempts were messy. Some stumbled. Some leaned too far. Some forgot which foot to move. But the trainer never raised his voice. He simply repeated the motion, again and again, letting them find their own rhythm within the pattern. The dust lifted gently beneath their feet as they practiced. The spears cut softly through the air, making a small whispering sound. The boys began to match the pace of the trainer, watching how his shoulders stayed relaxed, how his weight shifted smoothly from leg to leg. Your body learns slowly, he told them. You must be patient with it, just as the river is patient with the stone it shapes. They repeated the steps until their backs ached and their arms trembled. Yet the movements became less clumsy, less forced. They began to feel the ground, feel their balance, feel their own limits. Then the trainer changed the exercise. Now, he said, you will move as if the ground is listening. They frowned, not understanding. Do not just move on it, he added. Move with it, he demonstrated, stepping so lightly that his sandals barely disturbed the dust. His spear flowed in front of him like a slow extension of his arm, the motion smooth and almost calm. The boys tried. Their feet grew quieter. Their bodies turned softer at the edges. The ground seemed to accept their movement more easily now, as though they had earned its trust. The quiet lessons continued through the morning. They learned how to hold their spears when standing still, how to move without clashing into each other, how to sense the presence of someone standing beside them without looking. The trainer made them pair up, facing one another. You are not here to defeat each other. he reminded them. You are here to help each other see. They took turns, stepping forward and backward, mirroring one another's motions, breathing in unison. Sometimes a spear tip wobbled. Sometimes a foot slipped. But when one boy stumbled, the other learned to pause, to adjust, to move a little slower so that both could remain balanced. This, too, was a quiet lesson. By midday, the sun had become stronger. It pressed down from above like a steady hand. The boys' hair clung damply to their foreheads. Sweat rolled down their temples in slow, shining lines. But their minds had grown more focused. The trainer called for a break. The boys set their spears in a neat row at the edge of the clearing and moved to the shade of the crooked tree. They sank to the ground with soft sighs, their bodies grateful for even a little rest from where they sat. They could see the whole training ground, the huts lined up like silent watchers, the dusty field glowing under the sunlight, the line of spears standing quietly like slender sentries. Today, one boy whispered, felt different. Another nodded. Less loud, they were still tired, but the tiredness was a calmer kind. Not the shock of something new, but the steady weight of learning. The trainer joined them under the tree, sitting on the ground just as they did. This surprised them. They were used to seeing him standing, watching. Sitting with them made him feel less like an unreachable figure and more like part of their world. Early training, he said gently, is not about how strong you are. It is about how open you are. The boys listened, open to what you feel under your feet, open to what you hear in the air, open to how your own body moves and how another moves beside you. He looked around at their tired but thoughtful faces. If you do not learn to notice, he continued, you will not learn to survive. The words were not harsh. They were simple, honest. They sat quietly in the boys' hearts, like small stones placed carefully in a riverbed. Silence followed, but it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was soft, like a blanket wrapped around them above. The tree's branches swayed gently in the wind, making a quiet music of leaves. A small bird hopped near the base of the trunk, tilting its head curiously as if it, too, was listening to the lesson. One of the youngest boys, who had struggled the most with the spear exercises, raised his hand hesitantly. Teacher, he asked in a small voice, what if I am too slow to learn? The trainer looked at him. His eyes held no anger, no impatience. There is no too slow, he replied. There is only still learning. The boy lowered his hand, a slow smile touching his lips for the first time since he arrived. The trainer added, the olive tree does not grow in one day. Neither will you. The roots must settle quietly before the branches can reach for the sky. The boys let those words sink in. When the break ended, the trainer did not push them into more drills right away. Instead, he had them lie on their backs, beneath the tree, staring up at the patches of sky showing through the leaves. Do not sleep, he cautioned. Just rest your bodies. Let your minds stay awake. They lay there, feeling the roughness of the ground under their shoulders, the steady warmth of the earth against their backs. The sky above them looked vast and endlessly calm. A few white clouds drifted lazily by, unhurried, untroubled. For a long time, no one spoke. They listened to the wind threading through branches. They listened to their own breathing, to each other's breathing. Some of them thought of home, but the memory no longer stung as sharply. It felt softer, like a warm light that stayed inside them even as their surroundings grew harsher. These were the quiet lessons of early training. Not the dramatic clash of shields and spears, not the thunder of battle exercises, but the gentle shaping of attention, patience, and inner stillness. Lessons taught by dust and wind, by the sound of their own hearts, by the simple act of standing, listening, moving together. As the day stretched onward, they rose again, ready to continue. They did not know that many harder days waited for them, or that something as simple as rest would soon become one of the most difficult parts of their life here. For now, all they knew was this: the world had grown sharper, their senses had grown deeper, their spirits, though still young, had taken their first quiet steps toward becoming unbreakable, and the ground beneath them, solid and patient, stayed the same, holding every footprint, every lesson, every small beginning. By the time the sun reached its highest point in the sky, Sparta had transformed from a cool morning haven into a land made of heat. The air shimmered above the training ground, bending the outlines of trees and huts until they looked like wavering brushstrokes on a canvas of light. The sky was a bright, unbroken blue, too beautiful to be kind, too wide to offer shade. This was Spartan noon, and today, the boys would learn a lesson meant for this hour alone, a lesson about effort, endurance, and the quiet strength needed to stand beneath a blazing sun without letting fear or discomfort take control. The trainer stood before them, tall and steady, his shadow sharp on the ground. "Today," he said, "you will learn how to move in heat." The boys swallowed. Some felt nervous. Others squinted at the hot earth beneath their feet. The dust looked almost golden in the sunlight, glowing softly like fine sand sprinkled with tiny sparks. The trainer's voice remained calm. "The sun can break a man's will," he said, "but only if the man allows it." He stepped aside, revealing a long path marked with stone straight, simple, and unforgiving. Heat pulsed above it like a living thing. "You will walk," he said, "not fast, not slow, with rhythm." The boys glanced at one another. Rhythm had been easy to understand in the shade of the crooked tree, or during morning silence lessons. But rhythm under the burning weight of noon felt like a different challenge entirely. Still, they lined up, bare feet pressed into hot earth, shadows tucked close to their bodies. Sweat formed before they even began. The trainer raised his hand. "Walk." They stepped forward, each foot landing with a muted thud. Dust rose around them, catching sunlight like drifting gold. The heat pressed down, heavier with every breath. It wrapped around their bodies like a thick blanket, making every step feel like pushing through an invisible barrier. One boy short, with a determined chin, quickly felt the heat rising from the ground like fire licking at his toes. He fought the urge to lift his feet faster or break into a run. The trainer's instructions echoed in his mind: not fast, not slow, with rhythm. So he pushed forward, trying to make his steps even. One foot, then the next, breathing slowly, calming himself. Another boy at the back struggled more. His breaths came quick and shallow. Sweat dripped down his temples. The sun seemed harsher above him than on anyone else. He blinked rapidly, trying to keep his vision steady, but the shimmering air made everything blur at the edges. The trainer walked alongside them, his steps smooth. "You are not fighting the sun," he said softly. "You are learning to live beneath it." His voice was steady, like the murmur of a river. "Heat does not take your strength," he continued. "Fear does." The boys listened while they walked. Dust clung to their legs. Their throats felt dry. Their shoulders grew tense. But beneath the discomfort, something else began to grow in, understanding that the sun was not an enemy. only a challenge as they reached the end of the path. The trainer motioned for them to turn and walk it again. This time, their footsteps felt heavier. The ground radiated heat upward, warming their bones. The air shimmered like a curtain of light. The boys' breathing grew louder, steadier, pushing through exhaustion like travelers crossing a desert. One boy stumbled slightly. Another wiped sweat from his forehead but continued without breaking step. A third clenched his jaw, refusing to let his tiredness show. The trainer watched closely. "You do not run from hardship," he said. "You walk through it." The words settled deep into their tired bodies. Walk through it, not fight it, not fear it, not collapse under it. Walk through it. They reached the end again. Their chests rose and fell. Their faces glistened. The sun above seemed endless. "Rest," the trainer finally said. The boys sank to the ground beneath a thin patch of shade beside the huts. It wasn't much, but it felt like a gift. They sat in silence, letting the shadows cool their burning skin. Some stretched their legs. Some lay back, staring up at the bright sky with tired but steady eyes. After a moment, the trainer spoke again, a little softer this time. "Heat teaches you to find calm inside your body," he said. "When the world is too bright, too loud, too heavy, you must learn to keep your thoughts cool." He pointed toward their chests. "Calm starts here." The boys breathed slowly, letting their heartbeats settle. "You will learn," he continued, "that the body is often louder than the mind. Pain speaks quickly. Discomfort speaks constantly. But the mind must learn to speak more quietly." The boys listened with heavy-lidded eyes. The trainer smiled faintly. "Let me show you." He picked up a small clay cup filled with water. The boys straightened immediately. Water at noon was precious. Sacred. The trainer poured a small amount onto the ground. It sank instantly into the thirsty soil. "A foolish mind," he said, "focuses on what is lost." He poured a little more into the cup and held it up so the sunlight shone through it. "A steady mind," he continued, "focuses on what is given." The boys leaned in. He passed the cup around, letting each boy take a tiny sip. The water was warm from the heat, but refreshing all the same. The boys drank slowly, savoring each drop. "Your strength," the trainer said, "is not in how much you can endure, but how calmly you can endure it." After their short rest, he stood and called them back to the path. They groaned softly but obeyed. "You will walk again," he said. Their bodies protested. Their legs trembled. But they stepped forward once more, forming a line beneath the scorching sun. This time, something surprising happened. Their steps fell into rhythm more naturally. Their breathing aligned. Their bodies, though tired, moved with smoother balance. The heat still pressed down, but now it felt less like a hammer and more like a test, challenging, but not impossible. The trainer noticed the change. "Yes," he said. "Now you are learning." The boys continued walking, their shadows shifting beside them like patient companions. They felt the sting of the sun's rays on their skin. They felt their feet warming against the earth. But inside, a strange calmness began to grow. A calmness born from endurance. A calmness born from effort. A calmness born from knowing they could continue. Even when comfort had disappeared, they finished another lap. Then another, and another. By the time the trainer called them back to the shade, the sun had begun its slow descent, softening slightly in color, but not yet in heat. The boys sank to the ground heavily, some lying flat on their backs, others sitting with knees tucked close to their chests. Their breaths came slow and steady, like waves reaching a quiet shore. The trainer looked at them with pride. "You have done well," he said. "Heat reveals truth. It shows you how strong you already are, and how strong you can become." One boy raised his head. "But it hurts," he whispered. The trainer nodded. "Yes, pain is a teacher, but it teaches only those who listen." Another boy wiped sweat from his chin. "What did we learn today?" The trainer knelt beside them. "That effort is not loud," he said. "It is steady." He placed a hand over the earth. "That endurance is not winning," he said. "It is continuing." He touched his own chest. "And that courage is not the absence of pain, but the ability to keep walking while the world burns around you." The boys sat quietly. His words washed over them like cool water. As the sun lowered further, long shadows stretched across the training ground. The sky shifted into warm oranges and golds, giving the air a soft glow. The brutal heat slowly faded, leaving behind the memory of challenge and the soft pride of meeting it. The boys rose again, their bodies tired but their spirits steady. They walked toward the huts, dust swirling lightly around their feet. Today had been exhausting, but today had also been important. They had learned to breathe under pressure, to hold themselves steady under heat, to move when their bodies wanted to stop. Had learned that the sun, harsh as it was, could not take their will, only they could give it away. And they had not, as evening settled softly across Sparta. The boys ate in quiet gratitude. They lay on their mats, feeling the last traces of heat fade from their bodies. The sounds of night slowly replaced the sounds of day, the chirping of insects, the whisper of cool wind, the familiar rustle of leaves under moonlight and beneath the blanket of the night sky. They finally understood something new, that strength grows fastest not in comfort but in challenge, and that sometimes the harshest days leave the calmest nights. Under the burning breath of Spartan noon, they had taken another step on their journey, a step they would remember for the rest of their lives. The morning returned with a gentler touch than usual. A soft breeze moved across the Spartan hills, stirring the olive branches, making them whisper like old friends sharing secrets. The sky was pale and wide, a quiet canvas waiting for the sun to paint it gold. Little by little, the world brightened, as if careful not to disturb the boys who sat outside their huts, blinking sleep from their eyes. They were tired. Their arms ached. Their backs felt stiff. But something inside them had shifted quietly, subtly, like a small stone rolled deeper into the soil. The dust on their feet, the roughness of their palms, the lingering memories of the previous day's lessons, all these things had become part of them today. They would learn the one skill Sparta held above almost all others: silence. Simply keeping quiet, not holding their tongue, but wearing silence like a cloak, letting it settle over them like a second skin. The trainer appeared with the same steady presence he carried each day. His cloak swayed slightly in the morning breeze, and his expression was calm, neither strict nor soft, simply balanced. The boys gathered around him with quiet steps, like leaves drifting toward a still pond. "We begin," he said, "with the one strength every warrior must master before mastering any weapon." The boys waited, their breaths held in the cool air. Silence. The word floated gently into the space between them, landing softly but firmly, like a single pebble dropping into a clear lake. He motioned for them to follow him toward the center of the training yard. The sun casts warm light across the ground, creating thin shadows behind their young forms. When they reached the clearing, the trainer raised a hand. Sit. They folded their legs and sat cross-legged on the hard earth. Some sat too quickly and winced at the sting beneath them. Others shifted slightly to find balance. But once settled, everyone went still. The trainer walked slowly around the circle they formed. In silence, he said, "You learn to hear the world. You learn to hear yourselves. And you learn to hear danger before danger hears you." His voice remained soft, never rising, never breaking the peaceful morning air. But silence is not only for survival, it is for strength. He tapped his chest gently. When a heart is quiet, it can choose its courage. He pointed to the boys' heads. When a mind is quiet, it can see clearly. He pressed his palm against the earth. When the body is quiet, it becomes balanced. He stepped back into the center of the circle. For the next hour, he said, "You will listen." They took slow breaths, filling their lungs with cool air that smelled faintly of pine and warm earth. At first, their minds tripped over thoughts. Am I sitting straight? Is my foot falling asleep? Is someone watching me? Am I doing this right? The trainer seemed to know exactly what was happening. When your thoughts wander, he said gently, greet them, then let them go. Like guests who stay only for a moment. The boys tried. Minutes passed, and the world grew louder in its stillness. Heard the slow humming of insects dancing through the air, flutter of wings from a bird gliding overhead, the whisper of wind brushing against the tall grass, the faint creak of a wooden hut settling under the growing warmth of the sun. The beating of their own hearts, slow, steady, unbroken. One boy shifted, a tiny sound of rustling cloth giving him away. But the trainer didn't scold him. He simply said, "Notice your movement," then returned to stillness. The boy nodded and steadied himself. Moments stretched into minutes. Minutes stretched into something deeper, an awareness that wrapped around them like a blanket. The trainer waited until the air felt thick with quiet, until even the birds seemed to sense the lesson. Finally, he said, "Open your eyes." When the boys looked around, the world felt sharper. Colors were brighter. The sky seemed bluer. The leaves on the nearby tree seemed greener, more detailed, as if freshly washed by morning light. The boys could hear small sounds, clearly the crack of a twig, the scurry of an insect, the soft shift of the wind through grass. "You see now," the trainer said, "silence is not emptiness. It is attention." The boys looked thoughtful. They stood when he signaled, gathering in a neat row. The trainer began teaching them how to walk in silence, not the clumsy steps of children playing a game, but slow, controlled movement. "One foot," he said softly, stepping forward. "Then the other. Feel the earth. Let it guide you." The boys followed. Their movements were awkward at first, their feet kicking up tiny clouds of dust. But little by little, their footsteps grew lighter. The dust rose less. Their feet whispered instead of thudding. "Good," the trainer murmured. Now again, over and over, they practiced crossing the clearing in long silent lines, their shadows stretching forward like thin, dark arrows. They learned to keep their balance steady, to shift their weight slowly, to let their bodies become part of the quiet instead of breaking it. Silence, the trainer said, is a kind of strength that grows over time, like the slow thickening of a tree trunk. The boys stepped softly, their breaths steady, their faces calm. The lesson continued with paired practice. The trainer instructed them to walk side by side, keeping the same rhythm without speaking. "You will learn each other's pace," he said. "You will listen with your bodies, not your mouths." The boys tried. Some stumbled at first. Some moved too quickly. Some hesitated. But as the sun climbed higher and the clearing warmed beneath their feet, they grew more synchronized. Two boys who rarely spoke to each other found they naturally fell into the same pace. Another pair struggled, laughing silently at first, then finally finding the rhythm after many attempts. One small boy walked with surprising grace, his steps light as a feather, guiding his partner without a single word. The trainer watched all of this with a small, quiet pride. The silence was teaching them in ways no lecture could. By midday, the sun grew hot. Its rays pressed down on the clearing, leaving shimmering waves in the air above the earth. The boys wiped sweat from their brows, their breathing heavier, but their eyes clearer than before. The trainer finally allowed them to rest beneath the crooked tree. They sank gratefully onto the cool patch of shade, stretching their legs and letting out long, quiet breaths. One boy broke the silence to whisper, "It feels easier now." Another responded softly, "Not easy, just less loud inside." The trainer sat down beside them, leaning his back against the trunk of the old tree. He looked at the boys with a gentleness that seemed rare in the harsh world of Sparta. "Silence," he said, "is where courage begins." They listened. When your heart is loud with fear, silence steadies it. When your mind is loud with doubt, silence clears it. When your body is loud with exhaustion, silence brings it back to balance. He picked up a handful of dust and let it fall through his fingers slowly. "A warrior's strength," he said, "does not come from shouting or anger. It comes from stillness." A soft breeze passed over them. The branches above swayed lightly, casting flickering shadows on the boys' faces. One boy asked quietly, "Teacher, why must we learn this before learning to fight?" The trainer looked up at the leaves, thinking for a moment. "Because," he said, "a boy who cannot silence his thoughts cannot guide his actions. And a warrior who cannot guide his actions cannot protect anything, not himself, not his brothers, not his home." The boys considered this. Silence was no longer just. Quiet silence was strength. Silence was awareness. Silence was a companion that walked beside them now, familiar and steady. After their rest, the trainer led them to the river behind the camp. Its water flowed gently, reflecting the sky like a long ribbon of moving glass. The boys knelt at the edge and dipped their hands into the cool stream, feeling the chill rise through their arms. "Listen," the trainer said. To the river. They did. It murmured softly, weaving around stones, brushing against reeds, whispering secrets in a language older than Sparta itself. "What do you hear?" he asked. "Movement," one boy said. "Patience," said another. "Strength," whispered a third. The trainer smiled faintly. "This river does not rush. It does not shout. Yet it shapes the land." The boys nodded. "That," he said, "is the power of silence." When they walked back to the training grounds, the boys carried the quiet with them. It wrapped around them like a soft cloak, guiding their steps, calming their thoughts, steadying their hearts. And as evening fell and the sky turned a deep shade of violet, they lay down on their thin mats, feeling tired but strangely peaceful. For the first time, sleep did not feel like escape. It felt like understanding. Silence had become their second skin, and without speaking a word, They knew tomorrow would demand even more from them, but they also knew they were growing, quietly, deeply, from the inside out. The sun had finally begun its slow descent, sliding down the sky like a tired traveler looking for a place to sit. Its rays softened into a warm amber glow that stretched gently over the Spartan hills. The shadows grew longer, cooler, and more forgiving. The boys welcomed the change. Their bodies, sore from hours under the noon sun, felt grateful for the faint mercy of evening. But today's lesson was not over. In fact, it was only shifting into a new form the boys had not expected. One that felt strange, uncomfortable, and almost unfair. It was time for rest. Not sleep, not napping, not comfort. This was Spartan. Rest, the kind that asked more from a tired body than any drill or exercise. The boys gathered beneath the crooked tree whose branches had sheltered them earlier. Its shade was thicker now, the air beneath it cooler. The trainer approached, his steps as quiet as ever, though his eyes carried a deeper seriousness than before. "You faced the heat today," he said calmly. "Now you will face stillness." The boys blinked, confused. They expected more movement, more lessons about stepping in rhythm, more breathing exercises. But stillness, that sounded easy. Then the trainer added, "Stillness is harder than heat." The boys exchanged nervous glances. He motioned toward a patch of bare earth, oval in shape and surrounded by a ring of stones. The ground there was smoother, worn by years of use. "This," he said, "is where you will learn the lesson of bitter rest." The boys stepped closer. The earth inside the ring of stones looked innocent, soft, even, but appearances could be deceiving. They knew enough by now to expect difficulty in every quiet place. The trainer continued. "A soldier must learn to rest without comfort, to calm without softness, to recover even when the world gives him nothing." He looked at each boy in turn. "Sit," he said. They sat cross-legged in the dirt. The ground was still warm from the afternoon sun. A few small pebbles pressed into their skin. Dust clung to their legs. "Straight backs," the trainer instructed. "Hands on your knees, eyes open." The boys adjusted. "You will not speak. You will not lie down. You will not wipe the sweat from your face. You will not scratch an itch." A ripple of discomfort passed through the circle. "You will rest," the trainer said, "by allowing your mind to slow, while your body stays awake." The boys swallowed. This did not sound restful at all. The trainer stepped back, began. Silence settled over them, like a thick blanket. At first, the boys held their positions confidently. Their backs were straight, their chins lifted, their breaths steady. But minutes began to stretch, and stretch, and stretch. Heat still lingered in the air. Sweat dried on their skin, leaving a salty itch on their foreheads. One boy felt a pebble digging into his ankle. Another felt dust sticking to the inside of his elbow. A third boy felt his shoulders tremble from holding them so straight. But no one moved. The crooked tree rustled quietly, as if watching them with both sympathy and expectation. The trainer paced around the stone circle, his sandals brushing lightly against the earth. "Rest," he said, "is not the absence of effort. It is the practice of gentle control." He paused behind them. "Anyone can sleep when they are tired, but only a Spartan can stay awake and calm when exhaustion wants to pull him down." The boys breathed slower. The sky above shifted into soft streaks of orange and pink. Birds flew overhead, returning to their nests in graceful arcs. A faint breeze finally found its way through the training grounds, brushing against the boys' faces like cool fingertips. But even this small comfort made the struggle harder. One boy blinked away tears not from pain, but from the strange mixture of fatigue and stillness. Another boy clenched his jaw to keep himself from shifting. A third boy watched an ant crawl near his foot and resisted the powerful urge to move away. "Your body," the trainer said, "wants to run, to scratch, to stretch, to fall asleep. It wants comfort. It wants escape." His voice softened. "But the world will not always give you comfort." The words felt heavy in the air. "Rest," he continued, "is learning to breathe through discomfort until the discomfort no longer controls you." The boys focused on their breathing. In slowly, out slowly. The earth beneath them warm. The air around them quiet. The trainer's voice distant but steady. The minutes ticked by. Their spines ached. Their knees stiffened. Their necks grew tired of holding their heads so straight. Still, none moved. This was the bitter rest Sparta demanded, not comfort, not softness, not ease, just calm inside hardship. After what felt like an hour, though it might have been less, the trainer finally said, "Stand." The boys rose carefully, their legs stiff and shaky. Some nearly lost their balance. One boy's foot had gone numb, and he stomped it softly to bring sensation back. Their faces glowed with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. But something else shone too: pride. Even if they didn't speak it, they felt it. The trainer studied them. "You felt pain," he said. "You felt impatience. You felt discomfort." They nodded quietly. "But you did not let it control you." The evening breeze blew across the clearing. The boys inhaled it deeply. "This," he said, "is your lesson." He lifted a small clump of dust and let it scatter into the wind. "When you are older and the world becomes heavy, remember this day. Remember that calm can exist even when nothing around you feels calm. Remember that your breath belongs to you. Your patience belongs to you. Your discipline belongs to you." The boys listened through tired eyes. The trainer added quietly, "And remember that sometimes rest is the hardest thing you will face." They followed him toward the riverbank as dusk deepened around them. The water shimmered with fading sunlight. The boys knelt at the edge and dipped their hands into the cool stream, feeling cleansing relief wash over them. The chill soothed their fingers, their wrists, their forearms. Some splashed water on their faces, letting drops run down. Their cheeks like soft blessings. No one rushed, no one spoke. Their silence had become something earned, not forced. When they returned to the training ground, the sky had shifted to violet and deep gold. A single star appeared overhead, the first of the night. The trainer gathered them once more. "You have learned discipline of movement," he said. "Now you begin learning discipline of stillness." The boys looked at the earth, the sky, the shadows stretching long beside them. "You will need both," he said, "if you are to become strong." He dismissed them to their huts. Inside, they lay down on their thin mats. The ground felt harder than usual, simply because their bodies were more tired than usual. But sleep did not come immediately. Their legs tingled, their backs throbbed. Their minds replayed the stillness of the stone circle. One boy whispered to himself, "Rest is hard." Another whispered back, "Harder than walking." A third added softly, "Hard, but good." And in that small, quiet hut, a peaceful truth settled over them like soft dust. Strength was not loud. Strength was not angry. Strength was not built only through action. Strength was also built in stillness, in patience, in resisting discomfort, in breathing through difficulty without breaking. The boys drifted to sleep slowly, the lessons of the day settling deep into their bones, and as darkness filled the camp and the wind moved softly through the trees, the boys learned something only Sparta could teach so beautifully, that sometimes the heaviest battles are fought while sitting perfectly still, and those battles, though bitter, make the spirit unshakable. Evening came with long, slow strokes of color across the Spartan sky. The harsh white of noon had faded, replaced by softer golds, pinks, and gentle purples that melted into each other like paint in water. The sun dipped lower with every passing breath, and the shadows on the training grounds lengthened, reaching far across the dust like dark fingers stretching toward the huts. The boys' bodies were weary, but their minds were strangely awake. The bitter rest of the stone circle still lingered in their muscles. Their backs remembered the effort of staying straight. Their legs remembered the ache of stillness. Their hearts remembered the challenge of calming themselves, while discomfort tried to pull them apart. Now the trainer had gathered them again in the open yard. Tonight's lesson, he said, was about shadows, not just the ones the sun left behind on the earth, the shadows inside them as well. They stood in a line at the edge of the training field. The air was cooler now, carrying with it the faint smell of distant cooking fires from the city beyond. Somewhere, a dog barked. Somewhere else, a child laughed. Those sounds felt far away, like echoes from a world they had left behind. "Look down," the trainer said. The boys lowered their eyes. Their shadows stretched before them, long and thin, their heads distorted, their arms exaggerated. Their bodies turned into strange dark shapes on the ground. "These," the trainer said, "are your companions at the end of the day." A soft wind slid across the field, making the dust shift gently around their feet. "In the morning," he continued, "your shadows are short. They stay close to you. They do not show much." He turned slightly, watching his own shadow stretch to the side. "But at evening, when the light grows soft and the day grows old, the shadows grow long. They reveal more than you think." The boys listened quietly. They were used to lessons hidden in simple words now. Nothing was said without meaning. "Today," the trainer went on, "you walked in heat. You sat in stillness. You learned that your bodies can be pushed further than you thought." His voice gentled. "But now, the question is not what your body can do." He let the words hang in the air like a pause between heartbeats. "The question is," he said, "what your spirit will do when it is tired." The boys held their breaths for a moment. The trainer told them to spread out across the training ground, leaving space between one another. They moved silently, their bare feet whispering against the earth. Each boy found a place where his shadow lay clear in front of him, dark against the glowing dust. "Stand still," the trainer said. They did. Their shadows stood with them silent, stretched out versions of themselves. "Tonight," he said, "you will walk with your shadow." He stepped backward slowly, his own shadow slipping ahead of him. "You will follow it. You will watch it. You will see how it moves as you move." The boys began to imitate him. Each boy walked slowly forward, eyes lowered to the ground, watching the way his shadow slid along the earth like a quiet double. When he lifted an arm, the shadow's arm rose too. When he tilted his head, the shadow tilted as well. At first, some of them smiled. It reminded them of childhood games, days when they had tried to step on each other's shadows or shape them into strange forms. But the trainer's face reminded them that this was not a game. Your shadow, he said, is the shape your body makes in the light. But you have other shadows too. Shadows of fear, shadows of anger, shadows of doubt. He walked among them, his cloak brushing gently against the evening air. Those shadows do not appear on the ground, he said. They appear in your choices. The boys walked. The sky deepened. The colors of sunset darkened into deeper orange and purple. The field glowed softly, as if remembering the heat of the day but choosing now to be gentle. One boy noticed how his shadow trembled when his steps became uncertain. Another saw how his shadow stayed firm when he took steady, even breaths. A third realized that when he held his shoulders higher, his shadow looked taller too, more confident. More sure. Walk, the trainer said, as if your shadow is the person you will become. The boys straightened their backs. Their steps grew slower, more thoughtful. The field filled with quiet movement, a flowing dance of dark shapes stretching across the earth. Now, the trainer said after some time. Stop. They stopped. Turn. They turned so that the sun was now at their backs. Their shadows stretched out behind them, long and growing longer as the sun sank lower. Do you see them? The trainer asked. The boys nodded. They follow you now, he said. They do not lead. They do not move ahead. They come after. He looked across the field, his gaze sweeping over every boy standing in the fading light. When you are young, he said, you follow your shadows. You follow fear. You follow doubt. You follow what others say about you. He pointed at the ground in front of them, where now there was nothing but light. If you are not careful, he said, you will spend your life chasing the dark things that move before you. He stepped closer to one of the boys and placed a hand on his shoulder. But as you grow, he said, you must learn to walk toward the light and let your shadows follow behind. The wind stirred again, carrying with it the sound of rustling leaves from the tree. As if the world itself agreed, the trainer led them through another exercise. This time, they walked with the sun behind them, heading toward the faint line of distant hills. Their shadows slipped along behind their feet, stretching and shrinking with every step. Do not look back at them, the trainer said. Trust that they are there. The boys walked, their faces turned forward, their eyes on the path, their shadows quietly following, unseen but present. The light grew softer, dimmer. Tiny specks of gold floated in the air as dust rose and fell under their steps. The sky above melted into deeper shades, and the first stars began to peek through the veil of dusk. All people, the trainer said, carry shadows inside them. Fear of failing, fear of pain, fear of not being enough. He spoke gently, never rushing his words. But if you walk facing the light, if you walk toward courage, patience, and duty, those fears do not vanish, but they stay behind you. They no longer lead. A small bird flew low across the field, its shadow flickering briefly across the ground like a dark brushstroke before disappearing. The boys watched it, some of them wondering if birds, too, had inner shadows. After a while, the trainer called them back to the center of the field. The sun was almost gone now, just a sliver of light at the edge of the world. The boys' shadows had stretched so far they blended into the growing darkness. They could no longer see themselves clearly on the ground. It was as if the earth had swallowed their shapes and given them back only the night. Sit, the trainer said. They sat in a loose circle. The dust beneath them now, cool to the touch. The air carried the comfort of evening, the scent of cooling earth, far-off smoke, and the faint sweetness of nearby fig trees. In the day, he said, you see your shadows clearly. In the night, you do not. But they are still there. The boys listened, eyes reflecting the faint light left in the sky. So it is with your fears, he continued. Sometimes you see them, sometimes you do not, but they walk with you always. He folded his hands in his lap. The question is not whether you have them, he said. The question is whether you let them lead. Silence fell. It was a soft silence, like a gentle blanket laid over the field. One boy raised his hand, hesitating for just a moment before speaking. Teacher, he asked quietly, is it wrong to be afraid? The trainer looked at him kindly. No, he said. Fear is not wrong. Fear is honest. He looked up at the darkening sky. But if you let fear choose your steps, it will walk you in circles until your life is gone. He turned his gaze back to the boys. If you acknowledge it, bow your head to it, and then walk toward the light anyway. That is courage. The boys absorbed his words slowly, like thirsty earth taking in rain. They sat there for a while, watching as the last band of light slipped away and the fields were wrapped in blue-gray shadow. The stars emerged one by one, patient and distant. The moon climbed silently into the sky, casting a pale silver glow across the ground. Their shadows returned in a new form, softer, blurred, gentler in moonlight. They looked different now, less sharp, less harsh, like fears softened by understanding. The trainer rose at last. You have learned many things today, he said. How to walk in heat, how to rest in pain, how to let silence cover you, and now, how to walk with your shadows. He paused. Remember this, the shadows will always be there, but so will the stars. The boys stood, each one feeling taller somehow, though they were no bigger than they had been that morning. Something in them had stretched, like their shadows at dusk reaching toward a future self they could not yet fully see. They walked back to their huts slowly, their feet barely stirring the dust. The training fields lay behind them, quiet now, wrapped in shadow and starlight. The crooked tree watched from its place at the edge, its leaves whispering softly as if singing them a good-night song. And as they lay down that night on their thin mats, the boys no longer felt completely alone with their fears. They understood now that fear did not make them weak. It made them human. What made them strong was choosing, again and again, to walk toward the light even while the shadows followed. On the training fields of Sparta, under the vast and watchful sky, the shadows had grown long. But inside each boy, so had the beginnings of courage. Dawn arrived quietly, as if it did not want to disturb the world it found resting beneath a blanket of soft blue. The sky brightened slowly, shyly, brushing the tops of the Spartan hills with pale silver light. The crooked tree at the edge of the training field stood unmoving, its branches holding on to the last traces of night. The air felt cool, almost tender against the skin, and dew shimmered on the blades of grass like tiny pearls left behind by the moon. The boys awoke before sunrise. Their bodies were used to rising early now. They moved slowly but without complaint, rolling up their thin mats, tying their cloaks, and stepping into the open air with steady breaths. Even though exhaustion clung to them like a faint shadow, their hearts felt strangely calm. Today's lesson would be different. Not of heat, not of shadow, not of bitter rest. Today would be the lesson of stillness, Not stillness that punished, but stillness that strengthened. The trainer stood waiting in the clearing, his figure almost blending with the gentle light of morning. His arms were folded behind his back, and his gaze rested on the distant horizon where the sun prepared to rise. "Come," he said softly, as if speaking too loudly would break the peaceful spell of dawn. The boys gathered around him. Some yawned quietly, others stretched their arms. A few blinked against the early light, but all of them stood silently, waiting for the day to begin. The trainer nodded. "You have walked under heat," he said. "You have sat through discomfort. You have followed your shadows and faced your fears." He paused. "Now you will learn the lesson that binds all others, the strength of stillness." The boys listened, breaths held lightly in their chests. "In battle," the trainer continued, "a warrior may move quickly, strike fiercely, or run with all his strength. But none of it matters if he does not know how to be still." He placed a hand over his heart, still in mind, still in breath, still in spirit. He lifted his chin. "You will learn this now." He motioned for them to follow him to the far side of the training field, the quietest place in the camp, where a circle had been marked into the earth with stones arranged neatly along its border. The ground inside the circle was smooth, warmed by years of footsteps and lessons. The boys stepped inside the circle without needing to be told. "Sit," the trainer said. They sat cross-legged in a wide ring, each boy facing the center. The earth beneath them felt cool and firm. The morning breeze brushed lightly against their faces. The trainer walked into the center of the circle. "This," he said quietly, "is the circle of stillness." The boys straightened. "You will sit here," he said, "as warriors have sat before you, as your fathers and grandfathers once sat, as their fathers and grandfathers sat before them." His voice carried the weight of tradition, steady and proud. "But you will not sit in silence alone," he added. "You will sit in listening." He took a slow breath and lowered himself to the ground, sitting with perfect posture, feet tucked under him, hands resting lightly on his knees. "Close your eyes." The boys obeyed. The world around them softened. The morning air felt thicker, deeper. The sounds of the camp faded until only the quiet remained. "Now," the trainer said, "listen to your breath." The boys inhaled slowly. At first, their breaths were noisy, some too fast, some too shallow. The trainer guided gently in. "Feel the air fill your chest. Out. Feel it leave your body. In. Steady. Out. Calm." Their breaths began to match, like the slow rising and falling of waves on a quiet shore. "Now," he said, "listen to your body." They listened. Some noticed the tightness in their backs. Some felt the ache in their legs. Some felt warmth spreading through their shoulders. Some noticed the coolness of air against their cheeks. "Accept what you feel," the trainer said. "Do not fight it." A small breeze drifted through the clearing, brushing against their hair. The boys felt it. The earth beneath them smelled of dew and soft dust. A bird called somewhere in the branches of the crooked tree. "Now," the trainer continued, "listen to the world." The boys expanded their hearing. They heard the faint rustle of leaves behind them, the distant drip of water from the river, the soft hum of insects waking in the grass, the gentle song of early morning birds. Every sound came to them slowly, like visitors walking through an open doorway. "This," the trainer said, "is stillness, not emptiness, not quiet alone. Stillness is understanding." He paused, letting the boys sit with the words. When the world is loud, he continued, stillness helps you hear what matters. The boys breathed deeply. Stay here, he said gently. Stay inside your breath. Stay with your thoughts, but do not chase them. Minutes passed, their bodies softened, their minds settled, their thoughts slowed, drifting like clouds across a soft sky. The sun rose a little higher, painting the training ground in shades of gold, but the boys kept their eyes closed, feeling the warmth without needing to see it. One boy began to notice something new, his heartbeat, slow and steady, like a drum played by steady hands deep inside his chest. He listened to it quietly, realizing how strong and constant it was. Another boy felt a sudden wave of sadness, memories of home rising in his mind. But instead of pushing the sadness away, he breathed through it, slowly, calmly, and with each breath, the sadness softened into something gentler, something that felt more like memory than pain. A third boy felt anger rise inside him, anger at the difficulty, at the exhaustion, at the challenges still ahead. But when he breathed through it, the anger lost its sharpness. It became a steady heat instead of a fire, a warmth he could manage instead of a flame that controlled him. This was the purpose of stillness, to give shape to the things inside them, to understand instead of react, to feel without being ruled by feeling. The trainer finally spoke. Open your eyes. The boys opened them. Slowly, the world looked different now. Not brighter, not louder, just clearer. They saw the curve of the training field, soft and golden in the light. They saw the shadows of the huts stretching gently across the earth. They saw the crooked trees standing tall against the brightening sky. But more importantly, they saw themselves differently, not as tired boys, not as frightened children, but as beginners taking their first steps into a kind of strength deeper than muscle. Stand, the trainer said. They stood there. Movements were slower, more deliberate, more aware. The trainer led them through a slow series of steps, each movement flowing into the next like water. Not a drill, not practice, just movement inside, calm. Feel your balance, he said. Feel your breath carry your body. They raised their arms, lowered them, shifted their weight, stepped lightly across the earth. The dust rose gently beneath their feet, but their movement made it swirl slowly rather than scatter. You have learned many lessons, the trainer said, watching them closely. Now you must learn to combine them. They moved, breathing in rhythm, walking with awareness, balancing with quiet, strength, moving like shadows flowing across the ground. Stillness, he said, is not stopping. Stillness is pausing inside each movement. He demonstrated, lifting one foot and holding it steady before placing it down again with soft control. The boys mimicked him, and though some wavered, they continued until the motion felt more natural. You rest inside each breath, he said, each moment, each pause. They practiced until the morning sun stood fully above them, warm but gentle after its earlier rise. When finally the trainer told them to stop, the boys gathered in a circle again. You have learned to hear yourself, he said, to steady yourself, to understand your own heart. He looked at them with quiet pride. You are growing. The boys breathed deeply. A peaceful silence settled inside the circle, a silence that did not feel heavy, like the silence of bitter rest, a silence that did not feel sharp, like the silence of early discipline. This silence felt warm, familiar, steady. As they left the circle and walked toward the river for their midday drink, they felt lighter inside, not because they were free of challenge, but because they now understood how to sit inside difficulty without losing themselves. Stillness had become part of them, woven quietly into their spirits, and though the path ahead was long and filled with harder days, they now carried something precious: calm that could not be taken, strength that could not be shaken, a stillness that would guide them long after the shadows shifted and the sun set again, the stillness that forged their strength. Night did not fall suddenly over Sparta. It drifted down slowly, softly, like a great dark curtain lowered by gentle hands. The last light of day melted into deep shades of violet and indigo, spreading across the sky until the world felt wrapped in a quiet, endless calm. The crooked tree on the edge of the training field stood like a silent guardian, its branches outlined in silver by the rising moon. The boys gathered outside their huts, tired but steady. Their bodies were sore from the day's trials, but their spirits felt strangely light, as if something invisible had settled inside them. New balance, a new calmness, a new understanding tonight. The trainer had called them for one final lesson, a lesson not of the body, not of movement, not of heat or shadows or stillness, a lesson of the sky. "Come," he said softly, standing at the path that led toward the small hill behind the camp. His silhouette was dark against the open field, but his presence felt warm and familiar. The boys followed him quietly, their sandals whispering against the cool earth. The night breeze brushed lightly against their skin, carrying the faint scent of pine from the nearby woods. Above them, the sky stretched wide and glittering, sprinkled with stars that seemed to hang lower tonight, closer to the world, closer to their small beating hearts as they climbed the hill. The trainer moved slowly, as though he wanted the boys to feel every step, to hear the soft crunch of dried grass beneath their feet, to sense the night settling deeper around them. When they reached the top, the view opened beautifully. The entire valley lay beneath them like a sleeping giant, the lights of distant homes flickering softly like scattered fireflies. The boys sat in a circle. Without needing to be told, the trainer stood at the center, looking up at the sky. "In Sparta," he said quietly, "the day teaches your body." He pointed toward the fields below. "The sun teaches your endurance." He touched his chest. "Silence teaches your mind." Then he lifted his hand toward the sky. "But the night teaches your spirit." The boys gazed upward. The stars were countless bright, shimmering dots on a dark velvet canvas. Some twinkled softly, others glowed steadily. A few formed lines and shapes that felt familiar even though the boys could not yet name them. "The night does not shout," the trainer said. "It whispers." He lowered himself to the ground and sat with them. "The stars do not rush," he continued. "They wait." A small breeze moved across the hill, brushing the grass, carrying the soft music of insects hidden in the dark. "In the day," the trainer said, "your eyes learn to see what is in front of you." He looked at the boys gently. "But at night, your heart learns to see what is inside you." One boy lifted his face toward the sky in wonder. Another blinked slowly, feeling tears he could not explain. Another felt a sudden softness, a feeling that reminded him of home. The trainer leaned back, resting his weight on his hands. "Look," he whispered, "at how vast the sky is." The boys looked. "Look," he said, "at how small each star seems, and yet how bright." The boys breathed deeply. "Remember this," he murmured. "You are small now, but you can be bright." The words fell into the night like tiny stones dropped into a still pond. Rippling through each boy's spirit, he continued, "Strength is not only found in your arms or legs. It is found in the way you rise each morning, in the way you walk through fear, in the way you carry yourself when no one is watching." He looked at them one by one, "and in the way you stand beneath the sky." The boys gazed upward again. The moon cast a soft silver glow on their faces. Their shadows stretched faintly behind them, blurred and gentle, no longer harsh shapes on the ground. The stars above seemed endless, patient, eternal. "Tonight," the trainer said, "you will learn the lesson of the stars." He paused. "A warrior is strongest when he remembers that he is not alone." The boys looked at him. "Look at the sky," he said. "Every star stands alone, yet together they make constellations. Together they make patterns. Together they make meaning." He pointed upward. "So it is with you." The boys felt the truth of his words. A warmth grew inside them, soft, steady, quiet. "You walk your path," he said, "but your brothers walk beside you. You carry your fears, but your brothers carry theirs. Together, you create something greater than yourselves." The wind carried his words gently across the hill. "And when you feel lost," he added, "look to the sky. The stars will not tell you where to go, but they will remind you that you can keep going." The boys breathed deeply. For a long time, they sat in silence, letting the night speak to them in its own slow language. The trainer did not rush them. He simply sat with them, looking at the same sky, letting the same stars sink quietly into his own memory. Eventually, he spoke again. "You have learned many lessons," he said softly, "but this one you must carry with you all your lives." He pointed to the horizon, where the faintest hint of dawn touched the edge of the world with pale silver. "No night lasts forever," he said, "and no hardship does either." He lowered his hand. "When darkness grows long, so does your strength." The boys looked at one another. Their hearts felt fuller. Their spirits felt steadier. Their bodies felt tired. Yes, but a good, deep kind of tired. The kind that comes from learning something true. The trainer stood. "It is time to sleep," he said gently, but before the boys could move, he added something quietly, something that seemed to float into the night itself. "And when sleep finds you," he whispered, "let it be soft. Let it be easy. Let it carry you the way the stars carry the sky." The boys rose slowly, their movements peaceful. They walked back down the hill in silence, their shadows moving beside them like quiet friends. The air felt cool and comforting. The ground felt familiar beneath their feet. Inside their huts, they lay down on their thin mats. But tonight, the mats did not feel as hard. The darkness inside the hut did not feel as deep. The air did not feel as heavy. Something inside them had softened, something deep and quiet and warm. As their eyes grew heavy, they remembered the stars, how softly they shone, how patiently they waited, how calmly they filled the night. And in that gentle memory, their breaths slowed, their bodies grew still, their hearts relaxed. Sleep came to them the way moonlight touches water slowly, silently, beautifully. And as their dreams began to rise around them like soft clouds, the last thought that drifted through their young minds was simple, peaceful, and true, that under the wide and ancient sky of Sparta, even the smallest child could feel a little closer to courage, a little closer to tomorrow. a little closer to the strength waiting quietly in his own heart.